Hi, my name is Christine Crum, and I am your host for ICAN. ICAN is a show dedicated to providing information to anyone who needs help. Help with what? Help with getting answers on where to go to get help with drug misuse, helping veterans find where they can go to get help, homelessness, and more. Once a month on this channel, we will take an hour to discover just what is really going on in our community. We will have interviews of people who can help and people who need help. We will discover all the stats, figures, and truth or fiction about drug, alcohol, and cigarettes. This is a program for not just adults, but kids too. We are all a part of this community, and we are all in this together. Welcome to ICAN, because I can make a difference, and so can you.
Open our hearts, free every soul. The fear inside, you must let it go. Oh, that monster, before it conquers you. Yeah, we all have demons, we fight every day. You get knocked down, but the bell hasn't rang, so keep going. Just stay focused when life seems hopeless. Before life passes you by, you must, like a bird with broken wings always. You've gotta reach for the stars. It might seem far. Ooh, don't stop. You gotta try. Oh, 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 you gotta try. Never stop dreaming, even away. Nothing can stop you from winning this race, so keep going. Just stay focused. Yeah, I am the tiger, I own the prize. Every storm is with the rainbow in the sky. You are golden. If no one else noticed, don't stop, keep going. Before life passes you by, you must, like a bird with broken wings always. You gotta reach for the stars. It might seem far. Ooh, don't stop. You gotta try. Oh, 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 you gotta try. You gotta try. All you got to do is try. Oh, you gotta 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 try. You gotta try. All you got to do is try. You gotta try.
I think the biggest piece of advice I have for someone going through addiction or thinking about going to rehab is being honest with yourself. Don't be afraid to get help. I think that's the biggest stigma that we're trying to erase is don't be afraid to ask for help.
Well, welcome to our show, ICAN. This is a show where we talk about substance use, specifically alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use and misuse. So we can raise awareness about addiction issues and mental health, and advocate for more resources for people who are struggling with these issues. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm really excited today, Chris, because we're going to be talking to some guests who have lived experience in terms of being a parent of someone who is struggling with a substance use disorder. So I think that is a really unique perspective, and there are a lot of people who are, in this category of being a parent and just trying to figure out what to do when their child or adult child is struggling with, alcohol or drug use. So I think it'll be really a great show, and we'll be asking them lots of questions about how to get support for parents.
I'd hate to be a parent, right? I mean, I am a parent, but mine are all grown up. And now my granddaughters, I hate to be a parent right now in this day and age.
It is really a struggle, and it can be really lonely for parents because there's just so much. A lot of people will put a lot of responsibility on parents for the actions of their children, and so it can be really a struggle and sometimes lonely to feel like you're the one struggling. But there are so many people, parents, who are in this situation. But before we get started on those interviews, I wanted to talk to everyone about this new movie that we're airing next month, or this month actually, this month. It is a documentary called Written Off, and we're going to air it twice on this station. Specifically, we're going to air it on Friday, December 17th at 8 p.m. and then again on Tuesday, December 21st at 9 p.m. here on Watertown TV 985. So what I want to tell people is, and you've seen this movie too, it is so amazing. It's about a young man, do you remember? His name is Matt Edwards. He is from the north area of Wisconsin, so a lot of people can relate to the scenery because a lot of it takes place in the real cold weather.
Yeah, it's like Green Bay and.
Is it Appleton? I can't remember.
Yeah, Appleton and Green Bay, something in that area.
Fox River kind of valley area. And he first became addicted to pills when his doctor prescribed him some opioids for a botched toe surgery. And he just got into this addiction very quickly, and he kind of spun this sort of very complex web of lies to family and friends. And the interesting thing is, he was just a very creative, smart person and really well liked, and he really had to create this sort of web of lies in order to feed his addiction. But what I really like about the story is that it's very humanizing. It really brings home the idea that people are really great sons, brothers, boyfriends, and even though they're addicted to drugs.
What I like the best about it is how he journaled the whole thing, and that's how his mom was able to find out what was going on with him eventually.
Yeah. I mean, the truth was told in his journals, and every day he wrote about the truth, about what he was using. And so this documentary is built around those journals and the videos that he took, and then the interviews with his mom and
his
girlfriend and friend, I think, too. So I think this goes along with what we're talking about today. And if you can, join us for the Written Off documentary that is going to be airing here. And I'd like to show everyone the trailer to the movie if we can.
And then we'll be back to interview our interviewees.
Yes.
He said the strangest thing. He said, if anything happens to me, the journals will explain everything. I write everything that happens in there every day. So if anything were to happen to me, I would write about it, and you would know what happened.
You
guys have any narcotics in the car? Sure, officer, we have a bunch. You want some?
City and county leaders say more and more teens are actually experimenting with all kinds of opiates.
The whole course of my life was changed by one event, a trip to my local doctor in Crandon.
As those meds were kicking in, actually, he used the words, I felt like I was touched by God.
I'm at it. I have another script here for you for the additional 30 oxy-IRs. Thank you. Bye.
I must be honest within these pages. Failure to do so will render this endeavor useless. Intake, $100, heroin IV, 45 milligrams hydroco oral, 10 milligrams diazepam oral.
He picked up a lighter and he just burned his arm.
He was afraid that when the cops came back, that they would see his track marks. I had no idea he struggled so hard and so many people were so cruel and misunderstood him. He was so misunderstood.
I found this notebook and I filled it with time, the days of my life. I wonder if it will ever mean anything to anyone except myself.
So I'm happy to introduce our two guests today. We have Kimberly Hill. She's the program director for Recovery Pathways. And then we also have Mary Basil Rowolf of Safe Communities. Thank you so much, both of you, for being on the show today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Yeah, so, well, you bring a really unique perspective because you're both parents with lived experience in terms of you know, being a parent of someone who struggled with a substance use disorder. And I think that's a really great, you know, just perspective to share with people because we don't often get a lot of airtime on that. So I just wanted to ask each of you just kind of your background and just your experience with, you know, your child.
Sure. Want to do rock, paper, scissors?
No, you go right ahead.
Okay. So my background is, gosh, where do I start? In regards to being a parent with a child who struggled with addiction, you know, it's, first I'll say it is a family disease. It doesn't have to be, but it is in our case. And I think that was a huge part of my daughter's recovery, journey to recovery is I kind of knew where to send her, which is really an advantage that over a lot of parents. A lot of parents just don't even know, you know, and I work pretty closely with parents who have the same struggles. But you know, I don't know, in my situation, you know, and I don't know when you want to get to the questions. I mean, with all the addiction in our family, I decided to go back to school and become a clinical substance use counselor. And what we're doing right now is developing recovery communities in the rural areas. And that stems from, you know, the experience I had with my daughter.
Yeah. That's awesome because throughout the years of being a elk drug awareness, that's the question that people kept, where do we go for help? That was the hardest thing for me to answer because I didn't know.
Yep. Yeah. And then you add insurance and all that stuff into the mix. I mean, you know, it's really, So what I compare it to is filling out a FAFSA for the first time. Like, you know, kids don't know. They don't know. And that's kind of how I see navigating the treatment facilities or journey, or however you want to put it. So yeah, I'll let you go ahead and speak. But that's kind of my background is, you know, having a daughter who now has 8 years free of alcohol. So
Congratulations.
yeah, I'm so proud of her.
So was it alcohol?
Yes. So my daughter she's done everything she says, but she was a blackout drinker. So she was 9 times out of 10, she wouldn't know what happened. You know, so and sometimes she was very functional when she was drinking, you know. She's driven a car and not remembered that. Wow. She's, you know, she totaled a car and, you know, I mean, there's all kinds of factors that play into that. But, yeah, she's a blackout drinker, so.
I come from a family of alcoholics.
Okay.
I'm the only one that wasn't. So I do know where you're coming from.
Yep. So you're an affected family member. Yep. Yeah. And we do often forget about the families, right? Like, you know, let's help the person struggling with the addiction, with the disease of addiction. You know, Al-Anon's a great place for families to go. I'm very open. I go to a 12-step group as well, and that's kind of how I introduce my daughter to recovery. But again, that's such a gift to have that, you know.
And they've come so far from because my father died from alcoholism when he was 50.
Sorry.
He destroyed the family, and there wasn't this kind of help when I was little. So I'm glad to see it's come so far.
Yeah. And they say it either goes one way or the other. You know, either you follow in your parents' footsteps.
My brother did.
Yeah. Or you do the other, which is you just know better somehow, or you just don't start, right? Like,
I think there's some of it's genetics.
Oh, definitely.
Because
it is.
The first time I took a drink, both my parents were alcoholics, also had mental health disorders. It did not affect me. It did not beckon to me and call to me at all.
No, me neither.
I mean, I grew up in the 70s, and that's all I'm going to say. So there was other things involved, but it just never clicked.
Yeah.
So whereas, you know, I was pretty determined, having 2 alcoholic parents, I was not going to raise a child with a substance use disorder. And I was stunned when it happened. Because I'd done so much research. I tried so hard. I had worked so hard through therapy and so forth to overcome so many of the issues growing up in a severely dysfunctional home that I thought all the love and all the stability and all of that was going to prevent that from happening, because what we were taught was that it was a moral failing. And lo and behold, guess what? 10% of the population carries the genetic markers for substance use. So the first time they try it, 1 in 10 people are going to be off to the races. And my son was also had bipolar disorder, so you know, he had a double whammy.
So Mary, do you want to talk about your experience as a parent and then how that's impacted the work you're doing as well?
Clearly, we really struggled. We went through the whole where their recovery becomes everything that's important to you. There was a recent study not too long ago where they did PET scans on the primary caregivers for the people with substance use and the person with substance use, and their brains lit up exactly the same. So what happens is, for the family, their recovery becomes the thing that their brain is obsessed with, not a substance. So you end up having similar behaviors. I'll attest to that. I refer to it as going down the rabbit hole, where you're driving around trying to find them, and you just think if you just find them that you'll be able to talk sense in them. And we did send our son to treatment. It all came out of our pocket. We mortgaged our house, emptied our retirement, $68,000 later, and $30,000 in credit card debt. He came back sicker than he went. We couldn't find help. And unfortunately, he progressed to opiate use, and he ended up dying in 2015.
Sorry to hear that.
What that did, though, was drive me to not have other people experience that same thing. So I ended up becoming part of Parents Addiction Network in Dane County, ended up chairing it. They were in the process of working on getting recovery coaching and peer specialist for people with substance use disorder, and then we pitched it to also offer it to families, and Dane County chose to pay for it. And so I just kind of slid into the work I'm doing now as a certified peer specialist for family members. Mine was born out of tragedy, whereas a lot of people do that work out of recovery and, you know, the miracle. But I think both are great reasons to be doing it.
So with the families that you work with, what are some common struggles that they encounter, and how do they deal with that?
Common is that they think that they can change the trajectory. I'm not saying that they can't participate, help, be a support, but they think if they just talk to them the right way, just tell me what to tell them, so that then they'll go to treatment and they'll get better. I get that question all the time. And I could give them 5 million different things to say, and they could say it 5 million different ways, and it usually doesn't work. Can they be a support? And when there's a wish or a dip in the person, like I wish I was, you know, doing something different, or my life really sucks, can you give them information and guide them towards treatment? Yes. But parents are really still stuck in that parenting phase that I can parent them out of this. And you just can't. You can't parent somebody out of cancer. You can't parent a parent out of Alzheimer's, which is another brain disorder, and they're actually very similar in the behaviors and so forth. In dementia, there's a lot of similarities there, not in the part of the brain that affects, but in the behaviors. We just treat them differently. We're more sympathetic to one than we are the other.
It's interesting, you were talking about, you know, you think you can, that was one of the things I added when, you know, what are the struggles? Well, I literally followed her to a concert, paid to get in, which is not cheap, and I remember hiding behind the porta potties, watching her in the rain, just, what should I do? Should I go up there? Should I ask her to come with me? And then, you know, about 40 minutes went by, and I'm like, Kimberly, this is absolutely ridiculous. And I, you know, I left, and I went to a meeting. For me, I went to a recovery meeting and talked about it, which is, like, it's amazing that Safe Communities has family peer support, because it is so important to be able to even just be there for families, you know. So, you know, any kind of support we can get, I think makes a huge difference. But those are the kind of things I would do. Like, what are you doing? I mean, going to some, I don't know. I look back and I'm like, oh my God, I can't even believe some of this stuff. Because yeah, maybe, just maybe, she'll come to a meeting with me, you know.
That's what I refer to as the rabbit hole.
Yeah, exactly.
It is, and you don't even know how you get there, and all of a sudden you're there, and I have parents go, I have no idea, I swore I would never do this. I would never drive my kid to the dealer. I would never, and I'm like, you know, no judgment. We're all just doing the best that we can. And your brain right now is in fight or flight for your child. And so we're just going to have to, you know, work on finding ways to just calm that part of your brain, you know, and that's different for every, just like it is what works for the person with substance use disorder, it's different for every family. What's really going to help them come back together and, you know, refocus so that everybody in the home has equal time versus the person with the substance use disorder being like the giant elephant in the room,
Yeah.
and everybody else is just kind of trying to stay
Forgotten.
out of the elephant's
Yep.
way.
And everybody else is forgotten, especially the one that doesn't drink
Yep.
or doesn't have the substance
Yep.
abuse.
Yeah.
And
It's
I was that one. So,
when the kids are
so I
involved.
suffered as much as they did.
Yep. You did. Yeah.
Differently.
Yep. Yep.
I was going to
No,
ask too.
no, go ahead.
So, a lot of parents, I mean, do you find that a lot of parents struggle to ask for help? You know, they're kind of in their own lonely world. Because, you know, in this society, we're kind of saying, you know, you have to take responsibility for yourself. And, you know, they're so quick to blame parents for things that their children do. And that is really unfortunate because, you know, we should be lifting parents up and providing some community support. But yeah, I would think those are real barriers too.
Well, it is, and you know, I tell people all the time, I go, if my child had had a diagnosis of cancer, diabetes, or had been in the hospital for an injury, the casseroles would have come, the people would have called and checked on me. But because my child, who had a deadly disease, he lost his life to it, I used to get parenting advice. Excuse me? That's number one, not your place, and number two, like, that's the last thing I need to hear right now. And I have parents who are devout in their church, highly active, and they still haven't even told their pastor that their child has a substance use disorder because they're afraid that people are going to treat them differently.
And they do.
And they do. That's the problem. And they do.
Yeah.
And
I
they
lived
start to
that.
say, you got to kick them out. Or then my favorite is when the other people go the other way and say, well, you can't ask him, you can't make your own child homeless. It's like, okay, so which is it? Which is it? And the truth of the matter is it depends on the person, and it depends on the home, and it depends if there's young children in the house, and it depends on the behavior of the person. So everyone needs to stop with the cliches and the advice and just support them the exact same way that you would support somebody else whose child has a critical, life-threatening illness.
Yep.
Period. That's it. Period.
Yeah.
Do you think it's changing a little bit, getting better? I mean, you know, the idea that, you know, that substance use disorder is a mental illness, it's a public health issue that we need to work on together. Do you think,
I do see changes. I do.
Yeah.
I definitely see changes. Will I say that some of the old thinking is not prevalent? Absolutely not. And I also think it's difficult, like I said, we need to start looking at it and comparing it to like dementia and Alzheimer's, because what we do is we see behaviors that are really not pleasant. My son was not a pleasant person to live with. I will be the first to acknowledge that. That does not mean he didn't deserve treatment, care, respect. But I also have to acknowledge that the people who are dealing with them regularly, ERs, paramedics, police, it's got to be exhausting for them.
Yeah.
So we need to work together and support those people also. Because it's got to be really hard to come back to the same place over and over again and feel like you're not making any difference. But people do recover. So we need to look at those behaviors like we do if somebody who has Alzheimer's or dementia. We don't look at it as, oh my gosh, you're behaving so horribly. We go, that's really tragic that the disease has brought you to that point. And so we need to start looking at the behaviors of people with substance use and mental health disorders as, isn't it tragic that they've been brought to this point? And then go outside and scream because they're making you crazy. Which, you know, there has to be some acknowledgement that these people who are working with these people are also, you know.
That's a really good point.
What percentage out there is of parents that don't even care? I mean, I've seen that too, where they aren't there for their kids. They're only there for themselves, and they don't. What percentage of that is that they're still out there?
I see very little of that.
Now that's good.
Me too.
I think mostly what you see is walls that have been built up so high. Because let's also acknowledge the fact that if my son had done what he had done to his own family, to a stranger, you would be calling that stranger a victim, that they were abused. However, if it's your family, then we say, you need to parent better, you need to do this,
Yeah.
you need to do that. And so then you have just taken their whole ability to speak to the fact that they have just been abused. They're being stolen, they've used all their vacation, they're financially in trouble. And most of the people that I will say like that is, it's a wall. They just have nothing left to give, and there's nobody standing there with them, helping them to find a way to give over here, but protecting yourself over here.
Okay.
Setting appropriate boundaries so that you can give over here, and you fill up your tank over here. I would say that that's more the case, not that they don't care.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
They're
I
just
would have
broken.
to agree, yeah, they're broken, yeah. We become broken.
Oh, amen.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So in regards to your question, like when you were talking, I was thinking about, how in my situation, I remember calling the police, and I ended up taking my daughter to Briar Patch. That was kind of the beginning of it. But I remember calling the police and just, I need help. I don't know what to do with this 17-year-old child, even though I am in recovery, and they said, well, until she gets in trouble, there's not much we can do.
Yep.
So when
that also, get your son arrested.
When you ask about the change, do you see a change? I definitely see a change, because that was just 9-10 years ago, when now, like, even police officers, EMTs, they're being trained on Narcan, they're being trained on mental health. Like, even the town I live in, we have a mental health professional that rides with the police officers. It is getting better, different, and I think we're trying.
It's much different.
Yep.
Because when I was a child, we literally had to leave the house. The police could not make my father leave. We had to leave.
Yep, yeah, and that had to be, I mean, imagine how scary that must have been for you.
We spent a lot of time at my grandparents and friends, and we couldn't even be in our own home.
Yeah, and then not to even be able to wrap your brain around that, because a child's brain doesn't really develop till 25, like fully, Yeah, I've been
especially
reading.
males.
Right, yeah.
And it's the frontal lobe where all the understanding consequences are that doesn't develop till you're 25.
Yep, exactly. So I do think it's getting better and different. I mean, even like safe communities, having peer support for families, I mean, that's fairly new, and it's about time, right?
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, it's about funding. It shouldn't be. It's a health concern. It's an illness, but
it's not covered under insurance.
Yeah. So we were, where I work, we were lucky enough to hire peers as well. But I was saying, I wish we had a peer support for families out where I work. Because I spend a lot of my time on the phone with people, just almost daily sometimes, and not being able to get your child the help they need is just, you feel helpless.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep.
So Mary, I know you and I, when we were talking before, you had said that, after a family, after the family member maybe turns a corner and maybe finds recovery, the parents or, the siblings in the home, they are still sort of picking up the pieces from all the times that they felt victimized, really. And I think support for families in that way is really helpful too, because even though the person with the problem has sort of moved on, the family is still kind of healing as well. And that's, I didn't really think about it like that, but that can lead to a little bit of friction possibly.
Well, it's resentment and it's pain, and it's like they want that opportunity to be able to say, do you realize how much you hurt me? And yet their loved one is fresh in recovery. So it's like this it's this, so they don't want to say it because they don't want to send them into relapse, so they're stuffing it down, and it comes out usually passive aggressively, little snide comments, and so you can really torpedo the thing that you wanted the most, and not intentionally. This is not them intentionally going, I want to, you know, sabotage my child's or my loved one's recovery. It's that is biologically how our brains work. You cannot, there's a pressure valve in there, and you can only push the pressure down so much until the little valve opens and it comes out. And if we're not taking care of it, it will come out in inappropriate ways. That's life. So that's why we also created the position, because once their loved ones do get in recovery, we want them at a place where they feel able to set appropriate boundaries, understand, you know, good communication, you know, using I language and, you know, reflective listening and that kind of stuff. And also setting their life up so that they are doing things for themselves that relieves their pressure valve, so that then those conversations can happen organically, and they may not happen for years, but there's not this intense need to want to say, do you know how much you hurt me so quickly? So that's the other reason why help is important. It's not just about before the person gets in recovery. I always say, like, if your child gets in recovery, don't you want that relationship to be healthy? And until you learn how to set boundaries for yourself and your loved one, like, this is the line, no, today's not a good day. I have a doctor's appointment. We're going to have to discuss this tomorrow. And giving them permission to do those kind of things. Yeah, we see it more often than you think, where, you know.
So yeah, this is really great. Really great advice for people watching. So you recommend, you know, setting boundaries, and then just like self-care, and just trying to remove themselves from the situation somewhat. And would you say, knowing that the parents, they can't control every situation, so letting that go as well?
Yeah, and I think looking at the behaviors, and they feel so personal, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't talk to somebody and say, oh my God, can you believe, you know, I'll never forget when my child called me a name that he knew my father had used to really hurt me, and I was just devastated. Now, is he accountable for that? Yes. I'm not saying that he is not responsible for his actions while he was using substances. What I'm saying, though, is arguing with him, bringing that up over and over again, is not productive to what we both want. So having sources, whether it's support groups or therapists, my pastor used to preach from the pulpit that everybody needs therapy at least once in their life, and usually more.
Right.
So, you know, good therapy, good support. You know, if you do have peer specialists in your area, there's all sorts of organizations where, you know, where you can call. Safe Communities has a hotline, you know. Using those, I think, is really important, and acknowledging that, you know, you have been hurt in this process, and you deserve some care, self-care, because of it.
That's so important.
It's kind of nice because, like, now there's something called Safe Talk, and you can go online to safetalkwisconsin.org, and people can communicate, whether it's families or people in recovery, about, okay, what do I do? Where do I go? You know, my son's, you know, or in my case, my daughter's out there using. She doesn't come home for, you know, sometimes 2 days, and what do I do? Like, and so if you can go on to safetalkwisconsin.org, and it's a really great forum to find out, what can I do? You know, and get some suggestions from different perspectives. Yeah.
Well, you know, we usually post different resources and phone numbers, so we'll make sure to list that as one of the resources as well.
And I do believe you used to be a partnership for drug-free
Oh, yeah.
.org. I don't know that I have that all. You could call them and for 6 weeks get a parent to talk to.
Oh, nice. Nice. Yeah.
But so I'd have to look that up.
Yeah, please get that information, and
Yeah.
we'll make sure it's at the end of the
Because
show.
I don't think I have
Because
that
it
right.
was there. It was, but I remember drug-free.
Thank you. I can't.
Drug-free something, but I do remember that.
do they
yeah.
have a parent?
Drugfree.org?
It's Partnership for Drug-Free. I'm sorry,
Yeah, and
please. I'll look it up.
They really focus too on prevention, like, you know, because when you have a sibling living in the house and you have one who's using and one who's not, well, and you talked about this, it's not like you get to take care of the child that's not using because you're so busy over here, but they do need care, and you do want to talk to them about prevention. And Safe Talk does do that. Like, it is important to talk to your kids about many things, right? There was a time where it was like, no, we can't do that. But it is so important to talk to your kids. I'm saying 5th grade. 5th grade,
younger.
you start talking to your kids about, you know, because their brains really grasp the dangers and things, I think, at that age. By the time they get to middle school and high school, and this is just my opinion, I feel like they're so ready to kind of live on the edge that it's not scary to them.
Yeah.
I mean, my daughter never thought she was gonna not be able to not pick up a drink one day at a time. That wasn't her plan. So I love how there's also the prevention in that. But like you said, who's thinking about that when you're so focused on your child who you just want to get some help for, you know? For me, a friend of mine Tamra, was opening Sister House, which you're probably familiar with.
I am very familiar.
That was my daughter's. When she turned 18, you know, it's like I was that parent that said, we're gonna have to find you something else. I'm gonna love you through this. I'm gonna be there for you, but I can't have you in the house with an infant. I had just had a baby when she was 18. So what was that? So anyway. Right, I what was I thinking? However, she's lovely, and I'm so glad I have her. But she went to the Sister House, one of the first recovery houses that really, besides the Oxford model that were out there, and she'll even say that was the beginning of her recovery journey. Like she wasn't ready to quit, but she thought about it more often. So what we do in southwestern Wisconsin is we now have 2 recovery houses in Dodgeville, one for men and one for women. However, it's permanent, so they can stay as long as they want. We're hoping to open a 3rd in Richland Center for a parent and up to 2 children. So up to 2 children with a parent, which is really cool too. And that's the recovery side of it. But as a parent, I was so grateful that I found that resource, right? That I knew Tamra, that I went to your church and found out that information. But again, recovery housing is for people, I always say, you know, the houses are for people who want it, not need it, right? And that's what you talked about. There's a lot of wanting it, and intentions are good. You know, people in recovery are people who are actively using. They want it. There's times they want it, and then there's times where, you know, nope, don't want it today, but maybe tomorrow.
Yeah,
you know?
well, and I think building on that, I think what's really important to remember is relapses and so forth for families can be really painful. But it is part of the process. And every time I know that there's a lot of failed, families look at it as failed when they come out of treatment and they relapse. But with the people that I work with who have come out the other side and are in long-term recovery, what I hear from them over and over again is that each time they went in, it built on something, that they learned something new and that there was a building. So I don't want to look at them as failed.
Recovery basically is not a one-time thing.
It is not.
It's a continuous.
Right, and that's where harm reduction, you know, we also talk to parents about harm reduction, that, you know, if they tell me their child's using opiates nonstop and all of a sudden they said, well, now they're using meth, but they're not using opiates anymore, I said, can we take it as a victory? Now, I get that that's not the ultimate goal, but let's look at it as far as life sustainability, the likelihood of them overdosing is much lower, so it gives us longer and more of an opportunity to help them. So every step down is
a step up.
Is a step into recovery, instead of looking at it as an all or nothing.
Yeah, that's
We really need to stop doing that for parents too, and people in recovery. That, like, it's
Yes.
all or nothing. You got to be like all this way or all this way.
Right.
You can never give them cash. That's enabling. I hate the word. Just for the record, if anybody says enabling to me, they will get a lecture.
Been there.
Yeah.
Don't think it exists. It doesn't exist. Everyone's just doing their best.
Yep.
And one family may be able to do this and ask their child to leave. Another family, because of their past history and the things that they have gone through as children, as adults, that may not be good for their mental health to ask their child to leave. So we cannot expect that of them.
Right, right. Yeah, because, add trauma into all of this.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying. You can't expect, it's just, it's not because of life experiences. I mean, now, if you had told me that if my other son developed a substance use disorder and he would have to leave, I'd be looking at you like, oh, hell no.
Right.
I've got to keep my eye on him.
Yeah.
You know, this is, you know, no, I've already lost a child. You can't ask that of me.
Yeah.
And then to call me an enabler.
Right.
Excuse me?
Right.
No, I'm doing the best
You're
I
a
can.
parent. Yeah. See, my daughter started, well, who knows when she started, but.
I was going to say, are you going to tell me that?
Yeah. So it was really apparent at 15, but it took until 18. Although she's going to kill me, she's 34, and she's got 8 years. So it takes what it takes, and that's what you were talking about, like relapse happens. That revolving door is a possibility, you know. So it does, it just takes what it takes, and people get it when they get it, and that's the hard thing. Even about, like you saying, one family may be able, like at 18, she was, nope, you gotta go. Not everybody can do that, right? Luckily I had Tamra in your church. I'm going to keep bringing that up because it did. I believe to some degree it was one of the pieces of the puzzle that saved my daughter's life. I've always thought that, you know. So.
Well, I hope that, you know, just bringing awareness to this and all the different resources that we've shared, you know, maybe someone watching will take a piece of that information and remember it, and then give that number a call, you know, when they need it, and it could really, you know, save their life or someone else's life. So that's really the point of this program. But I so appreciate both of you for coming on today. I know we're kind of winding down, but you know, any other words of advice to people watching, you know, to give them some hope and inspiration?
So what I think about is that word enablement. I don't like that either. And the truth is, no matter what, I loved my daughter through her illness, right? That's what I did. Easier said than done. But I didn't, you know, I hear detach with love, and I don't like that too much
don't say
either.
That to me either.
Yep.
Sorry, don't say that to me either.
See, that's what I'm saying. You can't just detach from a child. However, I get what Al-Anon means when they say detach with love, take care of yourself, but I just don't ever give up. That was the thing I kept hearing is don't give up, you know. And the last straw for me was when my daughter got in a horrible car accident. They thought she was going to be paralyzed, and I just said to God, you know what, maybe she's going to die, but I need the strength to get through that. And that self-care, right? That self-care and don't give up. That is what helped me, you know. So.
Thanks, Kimberly.
Yeah.
I witness it every day. Recovery happens for families. Recovery happens for the people with substance use. I see it every single day.
That's good. That's good to know. Well, thank you so much, Kimberly. Thank you so much, Mary, for being on today and sharing your
Thank you for having me.
experience and your expertise in your field. I'm really glad that we could share this with everyone.
Shared a lot
it's
of information
so valuable.
that I didn't know.
Yeah.
And being a child of an alcoholic family, it's nice to know that's come a lot further from when I was little, because there was no help out there, none at all. Yeah. I mean, if your family drank, you were black sheep, you were shunned, even at church, especially at church.
Oh yeah. Well, so I was a CHIPS child in need of protection, and when you were removed from your home, do you know where they put you? Juvie.
Oh, gee.
You got locked up in juvie as a CHIPS kid back in that day. Because you come from a bad family. So that was what, so you come from abuse, they remove you, and they put you right into juvenile detention.
Ours never went that far. We were never involved with, the only thing we were involved with was the police, and the police, like I said, you gotta leave. You know, he can stay here, but you gotta leave. Other than that, social services, and as far as I know, I didn't even know social services existed.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know, back then.
Yeah.
But I just mean that's how far we've come.
Yes, yes. Recovery happens every day.
Yeah, it does.
Every day, that's
every
right.
day.
Well,
And
yes.
it's different for everyone too, so.
Yes.
You know, so yeah. Thanks
So
for having us on.
yes. And so we're going to end on that positive note. And then let's talk about what we're going to talk about next month.
Next month, we will be talking about veterans and their struggles with addiction, and also the new program, veterans program that the Waterton Elks Lodge will be being a part of. It's called Guitars for Vets. Cool. It's a very good program, and the Watertown Lodge also has a Heroes Cafe every month. I think it's on the second Tuesday of the month, and that's where veterans can go and get information, and they have a lunch for the veterans, but we'll have a lot about veterans, and the show will be jam-packed with a lot of information. So.
Yes. So that we'll be looking
Fantastic.
forward to that.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And we'll
Appreciate
see
it,
you all
having
next
us.
time.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Or I can.
Open our hearts, free every soul. The fear inside, you must let it go. Oh, that monster, before it conquers you. Yeah, we all have demons, we fight every day. You get knocked down, but the bell hasn't rang, so keep going. Just stay focused when life seems hopeless. Before life passes you by, you must, like a bird with broken wings always. You've gotta reach for the stars. It might seem far. Ooh, don't stop. You gotta try. Oh, 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 you gotta try. tiger, eye on the prize. Every storm is with the rainbow in the sky. You are golden. If no one else noticed, don't stop, keep going. Before life passes you by, you must like a bird with broken wings always. You gotta reach for the stars. You might seem far. Ooh, don't stop. You gotta try. Oh, 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 you gotta try. You gotta try. All you got to do is try. Oh, you gotta 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 try. You gotta try. All you got to do is try. You gotta try.
I think the biggest piece of advice I have for someone going through addiction or thinking about going to rehab is being honest with yourself. Don't be afraid to get help. I think that's the biggest stigma that we're trying to erase is don't be afraid to ask for help.